The Liber de Coquina, the Book of Cooking, is one of the oldest medieval cookbooks, and it is the capstone of Italian gastronomic literature. The author is unknown. It was almost certainly written in Naples at the end of the 13th century or at the beginning of the 14th century. There is no doubt about its southern character. In fact, the recipes and ingredients reveal the Arabic influences of southern Italy. The book obtained great success not only in Italy but all around Europe. The same could say for all the other Italian cookbooks of the 13th and 14th centuries. The international success of these cookbooks may also be attributed to the fact that they were written in Latin, the international language of the time. Maestro Martino compiled Il Libro de Arte Coquinaria, the book of the art of cooking, probably written in Rome between 1464 and 1465 and updated in subsequent versions. It is a recipe collection that marks a genuine qualitative step ahead. Working first in Lombardy, then in Rome and in Naples, Maestro Martino gives voice to an interregional culture spanning the entire peninsula. Maestro Martino's book has, in fact, a strong interregional character, and for this reason, it makes a clear contribution to the definition of an Italian model of cooking. The most massive Renaissance cookbook opera, meaning works, appeared in 1570. Its author, Bartolomeo Scappi, was chef to Pope Pius V. There are three Italies in Scappi's book: Lombardy, meaning the Po Valley and the north of Italy; the center of the peninsula, obviously including the papacy; and the kingdom, meaning the south, along with Sicily. Following a typically Italian perspective, three cities sum up the gastronomic culture of these three different areas: Milan for the north, Rome for the center, and Naples for the south. But Venice also has a significant role. Florence, Genoa, and some smaller cities complete the pictures of the geographically and culturally diversified Italy to which Scappi constantly refers, forcing himself to understand and especially to compare and contrast the diverse elements as well as to identify the common points. The interregional perspective of Italian gastronomy culture is a common element in most of the texts that have come down to us from the Renaissance, and it is found even in sources that are not devoted mainly to culinary matters. In the 17th century, the era of national recipe collections seems to have ended. The project of creating a synthesis of Italian cuisine in comparative form that was in Scappi's mind gave way to a growing emphasis on regional diversity, which was to be the dominant theme in Italian culinary history for the next 200 years or more. The recipe writers began to emphasize their geographical locations, positioning themselves on the map in a much more specific way than in the medieval and Renaissance texts. They emphasized the local provenance of dishes and they listed and discussed the different specialties of each city and town. From the end of the 1600 through the entire first half of the following century, there was a lack of activity in Italy's gastronomic literature. This silence reflected the sense of a cultural inferiority experienced by Italian when French cuisine began to dominate throughout Europe. The growing influence of French cuisine reached Italy's major city through the Piedmont region, unifying practices of food preparation and presentation. The majority of Italian cookbooks of the times were anonymous and combined local preparations or dishes from different parts of Italy with instruction of the French culinary traditions. The publication of culinary texts intensified after the unification of Italy, 1861. After national unification, each region started defining its specific culinary identity in competition with the identity of the other regions. This was the basis for the creation of Artusi's work. Pellegrino Artusi was born in Forlì Popoli in 1821 and lived in Florence for over half a century. The two regions of Tuscany and Emilia-Romagna are the pillars of his cuisine. In 1891, he published Science in the Kitchen and the Art of Eating Well. His familiarity with the central and northern part of Italy was translated into recipes that were derived mainly from Tuscany and Emilia-Romagna, and especially from Bologna. There is no mention of places such as Marques, Abruzzo, Apulia, Basilicata, or Calabria in any of the recipes. Even when his book was expanded in later edition to incorporate information provided to him in letters from women readers, Artusi did not include southern recipes, except for Sicily, from which just 3 recipes are included. Sardinia, for example, remains an unknown island. This is the country that Artusi knew and presented to his readers. As Italy is incomplete, we find the richness of Tuscany on one end and Emilia-Romagna on the other. The north-central model of cuisine is also evident in his seasonings and in the use of 3 types of fat: oil in Tuscany, lard in Bologna, and butter in Lombardy. Only 2 dishes described by Artusi are presented as Italian, namely tortellini and lesso rifatto, that means twice cooked meat. All the other recipes have local names. Even if only northern and central Italian recipes are included, and predominantly those from Emilia-Romagna and Tuscany, thanks to an educated use of language and a great approach, the book became the reference point for the average Italian family. His recipes were accepted and used by people throughout Italy, creating a cultural identity with gastronomy. The science in the kitchen and the art of eating well can be considered a unifying tool for the country and its gastronomic patrimony. Even today, the book is still a text of reference for Italian home cooking, and with its over 700 edition, it is one of Italy's most read books. During the 2 decades of the fascist regime, the presentation of Italian gastronomy tradition was completed by obtaining a complete map of the typical regional products and by promoting them with books, advertising, campaigns, shows, and festivals. The artist Umberto Zimelli was commissioned by Enid Italian National Tourist Board to create an Art Deco map, la carta delle principali specialità gastronomiche delle regioni italiane, map of the principal culinary specialties of the Italian regions. This map was where foreigners could identify the best Italian products and their place of origin. La Guida Gastronomica d'Italia, Gastronomical Guide to Italy, published by the Touring Club Italiano in 1931, completed the representation of the entire country. Cookbooks are at this point including Calabria and Basilicata, Abruzzi, and all other southern region neglected by Artusi. The shift toward a southern orientation in culinary matters was not limited to that fascist period. Rather, it began at the turn of the century with tourism to seaside resorts. The myth of the South as a miraculous therapeutic place, as a major resource of vitamins and less fats, was destined to become widespread. The south of Italy started being described as the place of the Mediterranean diet. This myth was based on discovering isolated areas where poverty and good health existed side by side. Here, small, self-contained communities were rigorously dedicated to a way of eating that rendered them resistant to heart disease. Extrapolating from the dietary principle of the Mediterranean people, Angel and Margaret Keyes published their findings in How to Eat Well and Stay Well, the Mediterranean Way. The volume presented Italian cooking and not only the cuisine of the south of Italy as a viable tool in combating cholesterol, heart problem, and obesity, and eating Italian style became a synonym of eating well, feeling well, and looking good.